Hi, everyone. Megan here from Romance by the Book with the lovely Marielle. And
Hello.
today, our special guest is Naima Simone, the author of
Hi.
our May Book of the Month, The Road to Rose Bend. Thank you for being here, Naima.
I am thrilled as always. I
Yes,
love you
we always
guys.
love having you.
Thanks.
So, this is the beginning of a new series for you, and it's a single title with Harlequin. So, very exciting.
Yes.
And I guess that kind of leads me to my first question, which is what made you decide that Sydney and Cole's book was book one? Like, how did you know that they were where you wanted to start?
Well, actually, when I pitched the idea, they weren't book one.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
No, when I pitched it, it was actually Wolf and Nessa's book. It was
I love Wolf.
Christmas book
I'm
was
very
book
excited
two.
for him.
I know. I just finished the galley read last night on their book, and I was like,
can
oh my
you forward that to us?
I know, right?
no. It's like, I'm reading it and I'm like, yeah, okay,
Oh,
catch that, then catch that. Okay, woo, so glad I'm reading it because I that timeline. Okay, wait, yeah, let me catch that.
Yeah.
So yeah, once I get the final back,
thank you.
yeah, I love this. I love their story though. She's like the reverse Scrooge. I mean, no, she's like the Scrooge, and he's the reverse Scrooge.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, so I mean, I love their story. But
It's
it
gonna
was
be a grumpy and a sunshine, but
they
he's the
really are.
sunshine.
Because
Awesome.
she's the ER nurse and she's seen everything that comes into the emergency room during Christmas, which just makes her not like Christmas. Well, and
Yeah,
other things that in her history that makes her not like Christmas. But yeah, she is the grump and the Grinch. So and he is
love
the
it.
exact opposite,
Love it.
which you'll see, if you read, The Road to Rose Bend. So yeah,
So
they're
that was supposed to be book one?
yeah, it was. That's what I pitched. But and they loved their story, like their synopsis, but they wanted a spring book first. So they were like,
Ah,
do you have a story to go before that? And I'm like, I sure do, which I didn't. But I was like, yeah, I do.
I mean, of course.
We've just learned a lesson here. You always say yes and
Always say
make
yes,
it work.
especially to another book.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wrote up a synopsis for Cole's book. And everybody knows I love a good widower or widow story. And so
Yeah,
that's how I came up with their book. And, Black Sheep Returning Home, Marriage of Convenience, Friends to Lovers, and they loved it. And so that's how Cole and Sydney's book became first.
Awesome.
nice. I had a question about this series because when you look at the cover and also like the setting of it, and even the prequel novella, like it makes me think that you're doing a little something different with this series than what you've done before. So I wanted to ask you what it is that you're envisioning for this series that might be different than what you've done in your past books.
Well, first, it's a much bigger cast,
Hmm.
because it's the main characters are like this huge family, the Dennison family, and they're like seven kids in it. And so it would be ideal, I guess, like in a really great world to write all of their stories, but yeah, they're the main characters, I guess you could say.
Right.
And of course, the world is this small town in the southern Berkshires of, Massachusetts. And so it's a different world in that it's a small town. And of
Hmm.
course, when you read small town romances, the small town is as much of a character as a hero or heroine or side character.
Right.
And of course, writing that is fun because you write, your unique characters in that small town that make it unique. And that's fun coming up with all of them. And so that's what's a little bit different is really writing a bigger world and having the opportunity to go deeper into that world and fleshing it out and having a bigger word count to do it
Hmm.
and not having to really streamline myself to just focus just on the hero and the heroine, but to really broaden it. And it's been a challenge, but it's been fun in a been challenged though.
It was, I mean, it was interesting to me because you'd think like smaller town, smaller world, but really it's everybody is so intertwined
Yeah.
that it ends up
Absolutely.
being like a bigger world, even though it's a smaller setting. I read the prequel novella and then I was like reading the beginning of The Road to Rose Bend. I was like, oh, this is the place where those guys had their picnic. And then they show up later. And I'm like wondering if the entire series is going to be like the more you read, the more you recognize people, because I'm already endeared to like the lady who owns the ice cream shop. And, you know,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of people that Miss Eva from the town council, I'm like, yay. Like I've got so many people that I'm like going to be watching out for now that sorry if that complicates matters as
No,
you're writing the rest of the story, but I'm like,
you better be glad she shows up in the Christmas book already, because now it'll be like, oh God, I'm gonna need to like another book because
you still have another round of edits, right? No.
So that hilariously leads perfectly into my next question, which was, have you ever lived in or been to a small town like Rose Bend, and how did you research that?
well, I grew up in a small town that had a big city feel, I guess, because it was small, but it was like 20 minutes from Newark, which is like 10 minutes from New York. So it kind of had like this big city feel, but it was small. Like you knew everybody almost. Like, because it literally took like maybe 15 minutes to drive from one end of town to the other. And if you drove just 5 minutes more, you was going to hit the next town. So so it really was. And you knew if you mentioned somebody's from like, oh, I know so and so. Oh yeah, that's what's the name's cousin. Oh, I know him. We went to school together. So it's very almost clannish in a way, because you know families. If you know somebody, then you knew their aunt, then you knew their cousin, or you went to school with, so it's small in that way. And it still is, so, but yet you were very close to a city.
So it is a
So
lot like Rose Bend then in the Which, where, sorry, Rose Bend seems like a town like that. It's a small town. It seems very wholesome and, you know, everybody knows each other, but they have access to a lot of like education and hospitals and things that they're
yeah,
not like they're not
Like total boonies.
remote. Yeah.
right. But but Plainfield definitely wasn't as bucolic as Rose Bay.
Okay.
Yeah, you had a lot going on. No shade though. Yeah, there weren't a lot of like mountains and
Not
all
the
of
vistas that you
that. Yeah, because like I said, it's 20 minutes from Newark. So when I envisioned it like, this like quaint, New England town. And I always like when people ask me, it's like Thomas Kincaid. That's kind of where I drew my inspiration, because
yeah.
my favorite artist, and I've always looked at his paintings as I would love to live in that kind of town, I pictured an incredibly diverse place where, if it was an ideal place where everyone got along, where of course, you know, we could live in a place where diversity was rich, where everyone's religion, everyone's sexuality, everyone's race was appreciated, rather than rather than something to be seen as negative. This is where I would want to live. And even though there are still people in the book, and you do meet those people where
Mm-hmm.
that's not their mentality, for the most part, people do appreciate that about each other. And so that's what I wanted to describe, that kind of place where it's safe. And I hope I nailed that, but I
Yeah.
also didn't want it to be a place where, it's unrealistic. And I hope I nailed that as well.
I mean, I thought that the book was not, I mean, it wasn't centered on like race issues or
Right,
like politics within the small town, but you
right.
did get to see kind of the workings of that and how people had to navigate, even within the family, when you have a family that has has adopted someone into their family who is very much a part of their family, but who has a different background, as far as like their cultural heritage and their like from where they came. It was really interesting to see how they navigated that, because it was a thing that didn't prevent them in any way from loving each other and from being family, but it also was a part of who they were as a family, the fact that they weren't all from the same background and that they had different challenges and different experiences of like the world around them.
Exactly.
Just pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I hope so. And even with the town itself, they were different cultures, different race, different religions, but it's just who they were.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something like extraordinary to see a Black business owner. It just was, because that's how it should be.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be something out of the ordinary to see a Black business owner. It should be something that's accepted. It shouldn't be something really like quirky.
Mm-hmm.
It should be something usual. And in this place it is. So that's what I wanted to show. Like, and I wanted to have a place where that, where we can see that, and where diversity really is normalized. And I hope I did that. And it wasn't like a screaming, look at me factor in the book. It was just normal.
Yeah.
And it's just part of the fabric of the story. And that's when I was writing the book and I was describing the town and coming up with how I wanted this town to be. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to write. And that's what I wanted to show.
I mean, I think you did that, to the point where the people who kind of were going against that, which I mean, it did never.
Jenna.
Yeah.
And her father.
Here,
I'm started laughing at me because I literally, every time we talked about it, I just called her that bitch Jenna.
That's her only one.
In all caps too. It was
in all caps, yeah.
But yeah, so that it was Jenna and her dad really that were the ones.
Yeah,
and then there was
the word.
Yeah, and then there was one other guy that seemed to just kind of go along with whatever the ex-mayor said. But those people stood out as being like, wait, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
because everyone else was just like, we're just living our lives. I don't know what your problem is.
I had a friend, speaking of Jenna, I had a friend text me and was like, okay, is Jenna gonna get her story? She needs a hero who is going to check her. And I was like, it's funny you should ask me that, because my editor wanted to know too. And I'm like,
okay,
how
so
do people feel about
that was one of our questions too. I'm like, do
my
I need
question
to about that as a reader for her getting redeemed? Because I don't know if I can.
I had a question if she was going to get redeemed, and I was like, I'm going to ask it because Megan is too invested. And Megan, when we were reading, was like, that bitch Jenna better not get a book. And I was like, oh. I was like, I better ask about this because you cannot be trusted. No.
So yes, I need to know if I need to mentally prepare myself for such a thing.
My editor in both books, right? When I was going through edits of both books, she said, you might want to trickle something in to show that there's another side of her. Like there's something that makes her redeemable, just in case you want to write at least a novella about her.
Your editor is trying to get
I know.
A book for Jenna.
At first I was like, when I first read it, like the note, like especially like the road to Rose Bend, my mouth was like,
Yeah, like I know, and you did trickle a little bit of that into this book.
I did.
And it was enough to make
in the Christmas
think that
book.
She probably has a reason for acting like that, but I don't care. It's not a good enough reason.
I don't know what it is, but it is not good enough. That's Megan's stance on Jenna.
I did it. You get more of that in the second book, and in the third book, which I'm writing now, you do find out
what it is.
And I'm wondering by
what happened in that summer
if your opinion will change. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see. I want your opinion after you read the third book. Okay.
I wish I had recorded so you could see the
Megan, do it again. Tell me what you said. Tell me how you said.
Reenactment.
I know it's hard. It was a couple weeks ago. It's when we filmed the recaps. But yeah, I was like, yeah, I just started that bitch Jenna. That's
she's saying it so calm now.
Yeah, no, I know it's funny. Well, it's funny because her dad too. I'm like, he's
just a jerk.
But to me, I'm like, oh, he's just an old man. He'll die soon. Like that's what I kept thinking. I'm like, but that bitch Jenna, she's gonna sit around and make things terrible.
Oh, God. Like I legit just teared up.
Oh, Megan.
Oh, God.
Clearly your characters are impactful.
Yeah, they draw a strong
leave you feeling some kind of way.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And like
I'm writing a good mean girl.
Marielle and I have talked about this before too. I'm like, I mean, you made me like a second chance secret baby book. So clearly I will read anything you write. It's fine. I'll get over it. But I'm like, come on.
That's going to be like, I should put that in my bio. I made Megan Burton like a second chance super baby book. So forget the whole USA Today. Nah, I met her. I made her like it. So yeah.
Funny.
She liked the trope she never touches.
That's right. Bow down.
So speaking of funny, because I think this is the first book I've ever read where motorcycles were involved and there was no like motorcycle club.
Yeah, yeah, go figure, right?
That was fun. But yeah, so Marielle and I were wondering if you've ever been to a motorcycle rally like the one they have there.
Not in life.
Okay.
Not in life.
I have
you probably feel like you have now that you've written it.
Yeah, I like that's the goal because like I have friends and I actually like called like get this, my pastor rides motorcycles, right? Like he rides. And I called him and I called his sister, who is actually part of like a Christian motorcycle club. And I tapped both of them, especially for slow dance in Rose Bend and this one on how to ride. Like, what do you do? Like I had them go step by step and like, how do you?
I thought that you rode motorcycles after I read that novella.
I didn't. I asked her about what do you wear? What do you do when you first get on one? How do you feel like, especially as a woman, what makes you love motorcycles and why do you ride them? How do you feel when you're riding? Like I asked her this, break it down for me. And she was telling me why she's in one. Why does she ride? How does it feel when she rides? And she just totally broke it down. And now they go on rides, you know, by themselves with larger groups and with, you know, just a smaller groups. So that's how I knew that. That's like, I did my, that's awesome. The research I like. So, yeah, that's how I found that out.
Yeah. I'm kind of surprised they didn't take you.
So have you never ridden on a motorcycle?
Mm-mm.
Have you, Marielle?
No, my husband got a motorcycle a while back and he I gifted him motorcycle classes so he could learn how to ride it safely and whatever. And yeah, and I don't know if he ever offered to take me, but I might have been like, I will never get on that.
Sorry. I mean, you're a nurse, so I can understand your reticence.
Yeah, I've seen people with no, and like anytime we're driving around and there's a motor, like there will be these people with like very short shorts, and I'm just like, oh, that's gonna be real hard to get
on. Yeah.
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 That's all I think when they cut somebody off. I'm like, like
Yeah.
my husband is like, why do we go here? Because I'll be like, oh, a decapitation, and he's like, what? And I'm just like, sorry.
Sorry, occupational hazard.
That's what happens in my brain. I'm like, ooh, that's a bad head injury right there. He's just like,
That's so funny. Stuff like that used to happen to me all the time when I worked in insurance. Like we'd be at a restaurant and I would see something and I'd be like, oh, the inspector must have had a heart attack when they saw that. Like that's like all I'd be able to think about whenever I would be there. So yeah, I get it.
yeah. Also, kids that are not in like a car seat. Like sometimes I'll be driving behind and I see like a little head just like walking, and I'm like, ah.
Yeah, that's very scary. For sure.
Megan, have you ever ridden one?
I have not alone, but I have ridden on a motorcycle before.
Oh,
A good friend of ours.
Look at how she tosses her hair when she says it.
Right? Like, oh, I've been on.
It was a long time ago now, but yeah, a good friend of ours had a motorcycle, and this was back when we, like, right around the time we first met, so we were like 20. So we were, stupid. But yeah, I rode with him a few times. It was fun, and we did, like, he lived kind of out in the boonies, so we just went like in the evening, and it wasn't very trafficky, and we were able to just kind of like go, and I felt comfortable. But yeah, it was fun. But I mean, I don't think I would ever be comfortable like driving one personally. But
yeah, I know I wouldn't be. Like my pastor and his sister, they're trying to get me to like ride with them, like of course on the back of one. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I still have been avoiding that, but
oh sure, next
You're
time.
like, I said I would. I didn't say when.
COVID. That's been my excuse.
Well, can't get that close. Sorry.
Yeah. What are we going to do when like COVID is no longer?
Yeah, I saw a meme about that the other day. Something like, "Oh, I'll have to go back to my list of ridiculous excuses for why."
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start writing them down because,
yeah.
Oh man, that's gonna really hurt.
You're gonna have to admit that you just don't want to go.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to admit that I'm a big old baby. I don't want to do it.
Aw.
That's funny.
I'm a scaredy cat.
I think I'm just risk averse enough that I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. So, I had a question that I wrote it down somewhere, and now I'm trying to look. Somewhere. I was going to ask you what the best and the most challenging things were about writing such a big cast of characters. I think you kind of touched on that. But did you have a thing that was like extra fun or extra challenging about writing such a big cast?
Well, I'll say with the cast, which really translates to the book, the best or the most fun thing about writing it was really being able to like just add more. And because when you have more characters and more book, it's a chance to write deeper, to spread your wings as far as story, getting to make a bigger story, to include more plot, and more chances for humor, more chances for emotional depth, more chance, because I love angst, more chance for
a lot of angst in this book too.
I'm an angst monster. Just more chance to explore all kind of connections and relationships, more chance for dialogue. So it was just, I could just do more, and that's always exciting. Of course, my editor cut back on my more.
As any good one does.
That's right. Because of course I went over word limit. I mean, my word count, but it is what it is. But
I mean, you can send any deleted scenes that you like.
It was like 5,000 words she cut.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it was through the whole book.
You when that happens?
No, because it wasn't like she cut whole scenes. It was like, Yeah, here and there. Because when I sent it to her, it was like 100,000 words. And then she cut it down to like 95 and some
Okay.
change. So yeah, and it was like here and there. It wasn't like entire scenes. So
Okay.
no, it didn't. She just
Oh, good.
made it, you know,
Streamlined.
yeah, more concise. And it needed it. Yeah, it did. She made it cleaner. So that was fun. It was that was the best part. The most challenging part was writing a bigger book because I'm used to writing 50K, between 50 and the biggest was like maybe 65, like with Sin and Ink. And so I was really nervous about that. And I even had moments of like, beyond the normal insecurity and doubts that well, most readers I think would have going into writing a book. And so this is my first single title, so I had doubts, I had moments of insecurity. And so writing this first single title, it was almost like writing a first book again. And so I was scared almost. And I had those moments of doubt. I had those moments like, what the F am I doing? Am I doing this right? Is this what she wants? And I read single title books a ton, but I was like, this doesn't seem like any single title book I've read because I'm writing it, of course. So of course it's wrong. So even though I have a critique partner, I sent it out like in the middle, like after a few chapters, I sent it out to more people than I usually do. Um, Especially like a couple of readers that I really trust to say, hey, look, can you read this? Because you read these kind of books. Would you mind reading and seeing if I'm going in the right direction? And they gave me some pointers, but when they came back with positive feedback overall about the direction of the story, it gave me boost of confidence and like, okay, you're doing okay, stop being so hard on yourself, because
Yeah.
that can really set you back. And I
Mhm.
was headed in that direction of being set back because I was being too hard on myself. So there was the challenge for me of not psyching my own self out.
I do understand that.
Yeah, so that was a challenge, but push forward, got the book done, and it felt like such an accomplishment when I finished and turned that book in. It was
Yeah.
like,
Like,
oh
whew.
yeah, I did this.
Can you explain to people a little bit what the difference is between a single title and a category, just so that people know why, like what's different about them?
Yeah, like a category is like my desires, my desire books, and it's a 50K book or thereabouts, because mine are never like truly 50K, but it's like a 50K book. It's more, the story is more concise. It's very much focused on the hero and the heroine and their story. Not much of a side plot, unless, and if it is, it's very little of one, and it is just one. It's very focused on the hero and the heroine. Almost every page is about them. They're almost on the page all the time. And it's a shorter story, and you can read it, and well, depending on how fast, like I can read it in a day, and it's like I said, it's more streamlined, shorter story, very focused on the hero and the heroine, and it's definitely about their journey and their romance. Unless it's a romantic suspense or something, and that could be the one side plot that's included, but
Um,
still the romance has most of the focus. With a single title, it's between 85 and larger. It could be like 85 and 100K. And you have a bigger story with a bigger plot. You can have different side plots going on, bigger cast. And because you have a bigger storyline and a bigger word count, the hero and the heroine aren't always on the page together. You have a bigger cast. And so you have side characters who might have their own storyline going on as well. And still the romance is the focus because it's single title romance, of course, but you might have like especially if it's a romantic suspense, that's getting as much time maybe, or the side story is still weaved in, and it might be getting, if the romance is 70%, well, 30% is going toward the side story, and it's still weaved in, so it's just a much bigger word count, bigger story. And you might not finish it in a few hours.
Yeah.
So
When I think of category books too as being really like, you're really clear on exactly what's, like, you might not know how you're going to get from A to B, but you kind of know what this book is going to be about. Like
yeah,
with your billionaire ones, it was like, they're rich, they're going to fall in love,
There's a blackout.
there's a blackout,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
like, you kind of had a very clear, very clear, concise, this is what you're getting.
yeah,
And I thought like with the category, like you said, because there's more space, I guess you can play with things a little more.
Yeah.
right,
Like I thought some of the themes of like grief and loss and things that you dealt with in this, you've kind of had as like secondary or like a backstory, I guess, for some of your
More
characters
so than an
before.
actual side plot. Yeah.
But but in these you got to see, I'm thinking specifically of like Sydney and her parents, or Cole's grief, and how how things had to be managed, or you were able to manage some of those things on the page so we could see it. It wasn't something that like was their history, but that didn't, they were able to deal with some of those things on their own
right.
without the other person like
Coming in
tagging along.
and like like in a category book, I could have done none of those scenes, like with Cole's mother-in-law and with Wolf and with his mother. I wouldn't have had time. I wouldn't have the word count to do any of those scenes in a category book. Like he
Yeah.
would have had to come to that realization on his own or with her, because there wouldn't have been the word count to do it. And a lot of the things that were discussed on the page in the single title would have already had to been resolved before the book opened, or would have had to been resolved off page in a
Mhm.
category. But with a single title, I had so much more room to really delve into that and really just expound on it and to show it and to really let the reader experience it on page, because I have much more room.
Yeah, so I could see where that would be like both exciting and also like one of those, like you gave somebody enough rope, you can like you
Yeah.
can do great things with it, but also like
Yeah, like, okay, too much. Yeah. I think, and that was another balance, like when writing that is, you don't want to overwhelm. Like, of course, that was part of his story, and Sydney's too. But having to keep in mind that it isn't a story about his grief, even though that is a part of him, but not overwhelming the reader with it, but remembering it's, even though that's part of him and he has to overcome that, that's not really what the story is about. The story is about him and Sydney.
Mhm.
So having him resolve it, but not really drowning the reader in the grief with it becoming depressing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a careful balance.
Yeah. I could see the where, I mean, I feel like that was um really, I don't want to say brave, but it was like a big undertaking,
Yeah,
because
the
to take
title.
on that level, because I mean he clearly like loved his family
Yeah,
that he had, and it was not a thing that he was going to be able to like
Just get
put
over.
aside. Yeah.
right, right. And he
Um,
had to deal with it. He had to let it go before he could move forward, but also not let it go in a way that it appeared trivial. And it didn't feel like, as because he, when you met him, he was at the graveyard, but suddenly, oh, okay, he's letting it go like it didn't mean anything. Like it, so it had to be important in how he let it go, but not in a way that it didn't seem realistic, like, oh, suddenly he's letting it go, but also not hold on to it in a way that it was almost morbid. And
yeah.
that he was, dude, let it go.
Yeah, I thought for me, when I read, I felt a lot like he in the beginning was, I mean, like he took it like a golem with his little like
Yeah.
little ring of grief, and it was like by himself, and it was
Yeah.
his precious, and nobody else could like participate in that with
Yeah.
him. And it was really nice to see by the end that like all of his support group that he had, because he had such great people around him.
Yeah. And that's
They-
all they wanted him to do, was just like, let us in and carry it for you and with you.
We'll
That's
do this
all they
together. Yeah.
wanted. Yeah. And I think at the end, he finally did, and they showed him like when they
That they can show up for him and be there for him.
yeah, and that's all they wanted, and they did
Mhm.
it. And the beauty of it was he finally allowed them to do it, and
Yeah.
that showed you he'd finally reached the point of true healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was a really nice, it was a nice way of showing, because he did it. He more than Sydney had like a really good support group. Like he had people who were, they would have bent over backwards to
Yeah.
like help him, and he was just like, nope.
Pushing
And then
everybody
meanwhile,
away.
Sydney wished she had more people to help her.
Yeah.
And had nobody, which is part of the reason why she moved back there to start with. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it was
She was
very cool.
brave. Yeah, she was brave because she had, even though she had her parents there, it was really like she had nobody. And she did that expecting to have nobody, because she knew she was going back and didn't have a support system.
Yeah.
Well,
It
at
was
the
really
beginning,
shocking
it's
that
like
people stood
she
up.
knew that her parents would be there for her daughter,
Right.
like for their grandbaby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Not her. Right. So she was brave, even though she didn't really see it at first.
hmm no, the resolution of her storyline with her parents had me like weepy. It was very like, it was really
We
well
talked
done.
about that in our recap that last week, I think. Like it'll be this Saturday's recap, I guess, when it comes on our page. But or I guess actually when this video airs, it will have been last week's recap. That's so confusing. Sorry. And so, but we talked about that, like how emotional we both got over the scenes they had, both of them really, with their parents. More even
Parents, the in-law, like the mother-in-law, all of those relationships were so nice. And like even the misunderstandings I felt that were there, and the like awkwardness between Sydney and her family, like
Yeah.
that felt so real to me, as the like these are people who all care about each other, and they have no idea how to do it so that the other
Yeah.
person feels it. It was very nice.
Oh, thank you.
I'm like, I had something else and I keep forgetting. Oh, I had a question that may be more fun, but how did you decide on which musical like prodigies you were gonna use for the names? Because you've got Coltrane. Is Leontine Price my very favorite opera like singer of Summertime from Porgy and Bess? Sorry,
That's it. Yeah.
okay. I was like, this better be Leontine. I'm glad.
And listen, like I'm writing book 3, and there's this scene.
And that's Leo's book, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, she's white, and there's this scene where the hero realizes who she's named after, because he's been calling her Leo all this time.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had a one-night stand like a year previous to this, and all he had was Leo, and he's finally hearing her full name, and he's trying to bring up delicately like, but you're named after a Black opera singer. She's like playing him like, I don't know.
Whatever. She was the best.
Yeah, she was.
If you want to name somebody after the best, then you name them Leontine.
She's like very proud of who she's named after. She's like playing them, but I don't understand what do you mean? I don't understand. Why is
That woman's
she's trying
voice.
to be all politically correct, and she's like totally playing them about it.
Oh, Leo.
Like I'm just so enjoying writing her, because she's so ballsy. But yeah, like she's named after her, and I truly hope my pastor never sees this. But I was in church, and it totally struck me. And I took out the notebook that I usually use to write down notes from the sermon, and I started writing down all the names of all the.
So we've got the Sonny and Cher, which were the people who like they let the children name themselves. That was a bad idea, but okay. um, we've got Coltrane, we've got Wolfgang, we've got Leontine. So Wolfgang and Leontine, classical music people.
Yeah, and then
Coltrane,
Sinead O'Connor, because the father's Irish,
Right.
and so he
Sinead O'Connor
loves
also
her.
has some good.
Yeah, and then Florence Ballard, because it's from the Supremes,
Mhm.
and then
Cher.
Sonny Cher,
because they let the children name
they
themselves.
let them pick.
My day job,
They
I
should have just put their foot down.
They should, and that's what Cole says, and that's what Wolf says too. And then the Christmas book, like Nessa says, like Wolf says that he's like, they should have just put their foot down on that one. and when she finds out the name, she's like,
creativity.
no. Yeah. But their parents, like her mother is almost like a hippie type, and she believes in like giving them free expression, and they're like, no, you should have just really put your foot down on that one.
The one time you should have said no.
That's right. That's the one time you should have said no.
Maybe let's don't.
I love how everyone's in agreement and they're like, what?
Yeah, the kids love it. And they're like, no. Like, I mean, the twins love their name, and they're just like, yeah.
Do you happen to, as the author, know if they changed their name legally or if this is just what they call themselves?
No, they changed their names legally, and they said like in the second book they mentioned that, and they mentioned when they got of age, because they came to them. Well, you kind of find out the history of how they came to them, and when they came of an age where they were able, they had the decision whether they wanted to change their names or not. And when they decided that they wanted to change it and they got to pick their names, they changed them legally. Yeah, because each one of the adopted kids, their stories are different.
Yeah.
And so you kind of find that out. And yeah, they changed them legally.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I was like, I saw that they like in book 1 that they named themselves, but I was like, is this in like,
like official?
Yeah.
Well, except for Cole, because his mother named him that because they were best friends, and she named him before she died.
Yeah, it was just Sonny and Cher that named themselves, right?
Yeah, and Florence too.
Florence.
She named
Oh,
her.
okay.
Yeah.
Florence.
So, yeah, that was funny. I did that in church. I came up with them.
I mean, you were feeling inspired. I bet your
pastor
was doing that.
I did. Worship was good that day. They just came to me.
Opened everything.
Yeah. I bet he would like knowing that.
I bet he would, but I'm just going to err on side of caution and I'll tell him.
Oh, you got muted, Marielle. There you go.
Sorry.
That's okay. Well, thank you so much, Naima. This has been so much fun, as always.
I always have fun with you guys.
We enjoyed reading the book this month. We hope everyone out there read along with us and enjoyed that too. And the day that you guys see this, Naima will also be doing a takeover of our page. So that'll be fun.
It's going to be giveaways and prizes and all the good stuff.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for coming and hanging out with us this morning, and also for always sharing your books with us. We love reading them.
Yes, definitely. So
even when we get mad at the characters.
If you haven't yet, you need to try a Naima Simone book. This is a good place to start because obviously we read this book. You can check out our recap videos on IGTV, but really anything from her backlist is amazing. The WAG series, personal favorite of mine, which you know.
Sin and Ink.
Yes. A widow instead of a widower in Sin and Ink. But if that's your kink, you got another
Sin
one.
and Ink were books that I was like, I don't know if this is my thing, but I guess it was.
It's not the widow who ends up with her
dead husband's brother.
Yeah, that's brother. So
and it's magical and it's super hot. So thank you, Naima.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.